Hello and welcome to the November 19, 2025 edition of the Low-Code Café. This is episode number 192, and our topic today is the Plantain 1.28 preview, where we'll talk about next-gen performance and tokens, and most importantly, DNN 10. So we'll highlight all the things that are going on with the release that is soon to go into beta. And we'll also talk about uh, version 1.27, some hotfixes that are available there as well. I am Dale Warner, head of support for Plantain App. This is an event that we do usually the last Wednesday of every month. We have a little different schedule this month given the Thanksgiving holiday, but it's just an opportunity for us to update you on what's going on with Plantain App, and we spend most of our time doing hands-on low coding, getting a relatively technical webinar, and we record all of these and put them on YouTube. So we're 192 issues in now. It used to be a weekly session. Now it's a monthly session, but these are all out on youtube.com/plantainapp. So today's agenda, pretty straightforward. I'm going to do a From the Trenches of Support segment where I will show some of the things that are important information about versions that are already out there, and then we'll spend the rest of our time on hands-on low coding. We do hope that you'll engage with us. We have the chat window open here and the Q&A window. If you want to, you can raise your hand and speak, but at the tail end of this, we've got a feedback form and we'd love to get your feedback. Low Code, as I mentioned, the cafe is usually presented the last Wednesday of each month. The next live one is scheduled for December 17th. That's um, in honor of the Christmas holidays and New Year's, that we won't be doing it on the last Wednesday, we'll be doing it on December 17th, which is also a Wednesday. All right, so here we go, from the trenches of support. Just kind of a highlight of where we are in our different versions. Version 1.26 was released in June of 24. There's been a number of hotfixes out there. The support until we usually keep a 1-year window on support. This was an extended support until window because our 1.27 release was quite delayed, but we're coming to the end of our supported through, which will be the end of this year, December 31st. So if you haven't made plans to upgrade to version 1.27 and beyond, it's a great time to do that. We released 1.27 in June of this year, and so that standard support would be through June of next year. Version 1.28 is in development, and that'll be the subject of today's hands-on low coding. But that one, the main feature of that will be compatible with DNN 10. And then we plan to go into beta reasonably quickly. It might be the end of this week, it might be into next week, but we're trying to get into the beta of that. So we'll be talking about that. We do encourage you to engage in the low-code campfire. That's Fridays, the same hour, and you can register in advance for that. And I'll put the link here on the chat. Put all these links on the chat. Um, yeah, I have. I see that there was an invitation for a Fireflies note taker. I don't know what that is, but we'll pay attention to that, I guess. Let's see. So we have these links. You can register in advance for the low-code campfire, and that's more of a conversation format. And then with You can get out to, I already mentioned the YouTube channel, youtube.com/plantanap. There's a community portal. Lots of times you can post a question there and it's answered not just by our support team, but by the community at large. And then there's the link to that feedback form if you have any feedback. Um, and I'm sorry, I don't know if I have the name correct. Niku, if you wouldn't mind on the chat just letting me know what that Fireflies thing is, that's the first time I've seen that, and I'd appreciate knowing what's going on with that. All right. Um, and before we move on, I wanted to talk about the hotfixes a little bit. So I have some systems that we look at month by month, and they have this on the configuration page of the 1.26 one. This is a quite stable release, and we haven't released any hotfixes in the last month, so nothing to talk about here. I have another 1.27 system that we look at week by week, and we've now gone to cumulative hotfixes. So when you go to the update screen, especially if you've installed earlier hotfixes, we went to cumulative hotfixes in version 1.27. So if you don't have this, you can go to the hotfixes tab and install the various hotfixes that you find there, and you'll get the cumulative hotfixes for the future. So you can see week by week we have released hotfixes. We have a regular schedule now, and we've gone to cumulative hotfixes so that there's a nice, stable, tested environment where everyone is installing the same hotfixes. Um, Thanks for letting me know, Niku. All right. So a few things that you'll see in that we fixed. You should read these in detail, but the few things that I'll call out. We've uh, fixed a bug having to do with importing APIs. So if the import already exists, we're handling the naming correctly. I mentioned that we have some UI enhancements to the cumulative hotfixes screen. Um, uh, some changes in forms and so there's that. Let's see what else we have in the November 11 release. Um, there was a change to Excel um, where you can have formulas in the output and the formulas compute. The patch method was fixed and for APIs, and we've made some improvements in large search things. Um, and then in the most recent release, just yesterday, um, there were things fixed if you're using the calendar view of listing. So it was broken if you didn't, in some cases, if you didn't have an end date, you only had when your event started, it wasn't rendering the calendar correctly. The create thumbnail action um, was fixed. It wasn't working in listings when you're trying to create a thumbnail out of an image. And then this change here, I'll call out. We changed the SQL query action so that now when you do a run SQL query, it is wrapped in a SQL transaction. So if the SQL fails for any reason, then the transaction is rolled back. It's like it didn't happen at all. That can have some implications for you if, um, because it's a change of behavior, if you're using SQL queries that do multiple things and any part of it fails, the whole thing is going to get rolled back. So that's a slight change in behavior. If you have any questions about that, please open a support ticket. Um, so just to remind you how this goes, if you install the whichever cumulative hotfix you install, you'll get all of them. I'm going to install the latest one, and it's going to give us everything. And you can learn more about what is included in a hotfix. You'll see all of the topics and they have an eye icon so that you can hover and see the exact content that you're getting. But it's all or none. You can't pick and choose. If you want, if you choose to install, then all those changes will get installed. All right, I'm going to set that aside. We don't have to watch it install, but it will be up to date when we get together for the next one. So with that, we're going to go on to our hands-on low coding. Let's see, we'll get to spend about 50 minutes or however long it takes today, but we're going to talk about the Plant and App 1.28 preview and a lot of the things that you'll see in that. This is not an exhaustive list, but rather um, um, things that are definitely in the version at this point. But let's do it. So what we're going to cover, there's a list of breaking changes, enhancements, bug fixes, things that are now obsolete. And if we have time, we'll take a quick look at our new forms product. Action Form has been around for many years. We have a new product called that we're internally, our code name is Forms 2.0. I think it's going to be called simply Form instead of Action Form, but we'll take a look at that and see what is going on with that. And so let's get our setup here. On my screen, I have a change notes tab, and this is all the things that we're going to talk about one at a time. And then I have a version 1.28 system here that we'll test against. And I have another 127 system if we need to draw a comparison or two so we can go back and look at what it was and what it now is. The first one that I want to cover on my 128 system, this is just a new system that we've spun up that doesn't have anything in it. It's empty. When I go to the configuration page, I've triggered a mechanism behind the scenes. I've triggered the ability that there's some things missing from this that need to be installed, and this is not a screen that you'll normally see. But I wanted to show it to you because we now have a new installation screen. And so you'll see this when you go jump to newer versions and even in installing hotfixes in the future that rather in the past we had when you installed updates it was kind of quiet and behind the scenes. You didn't get much feedback visually, and if there were errors, they're in the logs, and then you'd have to go out of your way to find them. So we're now going to an installation screen like this, where you'll see what's going to get installed, and we're still working on the wording of what the screen is going to say, but it's telling you what it's going to install. It's asking you to make sure that you have a backup so that you can restore to that and little permission checkbox, and you can cancel out of this. But I really want to install these, and I'm going to start. Um, when it starts, now you're going to see real-time progress as things get installed, and if you want, there's a show logs that's going to show you what's going on with it, which also, if things go wrong, it has the ability to, you'll be able to see and download and work with support on things. This installation screen is intended to improve stability. In the past, um, when installations didn't succeed because it was quiet and behind the scenes and errors were in the logs, you wouldn't see them. And now you're going to see a clear indication of success or failure. The other thing that is important to know as a system administrator of this is that when you install using this new method, if it doesn't succeed, the site, well, let me put it in a positive way, the site becomes accessible again once the installation completes. During the installation, or if the installation fails, your site is not accessible. And that's pretty important for you to understand that your users are going to see a lockout message under maintenance kind of a message until the installation succeeds. One of the main things that has, and I'm going to hit continue here so that we can go on, let it load while I talk. But one of the things that is challenged our installer in the past is that if you have a site that's under heavy usage and you're trying to run the installation, that users accessing the site, just the act of them trying to access it, it interrupts the installation process and sometimes causes failures. And so we're going to a lockout kind of a mechanism so that the installation becomes more reliable. But you're going to have to know that and be able to schedule it, schedule downtime if you have a busy production site. Okay, so now we have the hotfixes installed. Um, and so that's the new installation um, experience that you're going to see. So now I'm going to start just working my way through these change notes, and you'll see when we publish the beta, uh, which again will hopefully be within the next week, that this is the same kind of information that you're going to see when we publish this. But this is the list as it is so far. And so we always start with breaking changes. What's different? Um, and the first one is we've made a lot of changes in the token builder. It was completely refactored, redone, so that it's uh, modern and consistent, and uh, we're trying for higher performance and um, re being removed from instead of it being spread all over the place, it's very focused development. So, but there was in that process there was a couple of things that got changed or removed, and so that's kind of the big scope for this particular change. There used to be a syntax that was, you'll notice, so we have this basic token where we're trying to get something off the query string, the test parameter. And there is the second part of a token. This is less frequently used, but it's there, that you can take the value and format it. So when this token is rendered, it will say this is test and plus whatever the value of test is in this placeholder where it has bracket zero bracket or brace zero brace. There was this third part in the old system that is an else part. And this is, to our knowledge, rarely used. And it just says if that token doesn't exist, then instead we'll show this, whatever this is. And that is not present in the new in version 1.28. So if you have a rare use case where you are using this else part, and again, it's pretty rare because it wasn't even, I can't find it in our documentation. I don't know in what case you would be using that unless somebody advised you at some point in a support ticket to use it. But this shouldn't be impacting anybody, but it's possible. So if you're using it, just realize it's not going to work. The token will still resolve, but it's all this is going to be treated as part of the formatting. Okay, that's the first one. The next one is about we've removed inline script support for Token Builder. So I'll show you on a 1.27 system. And a lot of people don't even realize that there are settings here in the tokens, but there was a security setting that said allow inline script access. And if you go in and look at your 1.27 system and this is turned off, then this breaking change doesn't apply to you. But this feature, allow inline script access, would let you put Razor tokens in many, many places, and and in HTML modules, for example. And we are removing that. So the idea, I'll see how it looks in version 128. If I go to tokens, you'll see in that security section, it's just not there anymore. And the switch has been removed and the feature has been removed. So the idea is that we want to encourage you. There are Razor tokens. There's two varieties of Razor tokens, an older one and a modern one. And those are, we encourage you to create those rather than put Razor snippets all over your site. And that should give you something more stable and efficient. So again, if that switch is turned off, you have nothing to worry about. If it's turned on, you're going to have to find where those are and replace them before moving to 1.28. All right. I'm going to skip down here to this next one because it's still about, well, these are all about tokens, but this is more about what you'll see. There was a token called random that again was very little used, but if you if it works like this, we have a I'm on my 1.27 system and I click evaluate it. It just randomly picks from the values that you've provided here in the comma delimited list. So this would uh, give you an ability to have some kind of random what um, different values depending on what our randomization mechanism came up with. So it might come up with value 1 or value 2 or value n, whatever you typed there. This was deemed to be of very infrequently used and easily replaced by other tokens, and it's a non-standard structure, so it was hard for us to include it in the new in version 1.28. So it's just gone in version 128. If you try to do the same token in a 128 system, it will just return the same characters without picking a random value. So if you use random, you'll need to find a different alternative. I can suggest some that can be done with SQL, but if you need any help with that, you're welcome to open a support ticket. Um, so now I'm going to go back to the one that I skipped over, the token management. Um, just a little bit about where things are stored. We used to have if you were to examine in the SQL console, um, there are in the SQL database, there are DBO tables, PAA tables, and then if you create an entity, those are all put under the app um, namespace. We're slowly moving all of our previously early given the history of Plant and App coming from a company called and a product called DNN Sharp, the all of the tables that we needed to manage our system were stored in the same database structure, under the DBO prefix. We're slowly but surely moving everything to the PAA prefix so that all of the Plant App content is under PAA. So we under the PAA, there's now um, an entity, a table called tokens. And if we were to create a select and look at it, so I don't know if you're familiar with this wonderful feature that was written into SQL console, but you can click create a select on a table. It will show you all the fields and build it for you. And I'm going to just run that query. And so we can see the kinds of things that are in it. Um, so each token now appears here instead of the places that it used to be. From a low coding standpoint, you shouldn't really care where these are stored. Um, but for most users, it doesn't matter the fact that we've moved them from one place to another. But if you've built anything of your own outside of using Plant App low code that interacted with tokens, you need to know that tokens have now moved to this uh, PAA.tokens. But not terribly hard to figure out. You can see the name of the token, um, where its source is. So, for example, we're seeing some Razor tokens here, what namespace they belong to, and that's done by an ID when they were modified. Uh, we're going to global identifiers on everything so that we have a unique identifier for everything. And then some features here, whether or not the token replaces tokens when it outputs, whether HTML should be decoded, whether you script tags. And then we have the source type, so Razor, DB, all the different kinds of token types. So if you do things beyond just using tokens from our tokens interface, you need to know that they have moved. And so um, we list that as a breaking change because if you upgrade and rely on that, they've moved and whatever you have built will break. Um, moving on, error logging in APIs. So um, let's take a look at the API interface and we'll talk about this one. I'm just going to create a new API and call it test. We're not even actually going to use this. But so you define an API endpoint, and APIs would typically have some input, and then there would be some actions. And then there's this on error section. And a lot of people probably don't use this in the first place, but we've had a slight behavior change here that you need to be aware of. So if you have some actions here and they generate errors, the meaning there's something wrong in the code, like you've got a SQL statement that isn't accurate and it throws an error. Um, in the past, that would always end up being sent to the logs. And so anytime there was an error in an API, we were getting entries into the logs. I'm not going to go there and look at it, but you'd get an entry every time somebody called an API that had an error, whether you had any on error actions or not. Now we've changed the behavior so that if you have on error actions, we assume that you're taking care of the error and you don't, and we're not logging it. This is all in an attempt to clean up the logs. We don't want to have a bunch of extra stuff in the logs that you're looking through and you know about, and yet you have to wade through them. So in your on error section, if you really want something to also be logged, you can use the um, log event action and log it yourself to the log, but we're not doing it automatically. If you have nothing in the on error section, it will continue to log. But if you have anything in the on error section, then we will not automatically log it. I don't think that's um, I think that's a very sensible change for the product, but if you're relying on that behavior, just know that it's changed. So that's why we call it potentially a breaking change. Probably not a big deal. The next change is that in order to run uh, version 1.28, you have to have DNN platform version 9.13.7 or higher. We support and recommend DNN 10, and we're going to automatically try to help you get to DNN 10, but you cannot install. This is just a raising of our minimum requirement. Um, I will mention the documentation is at learn.plantanapp.com, and we put on our compatibility page under important notes, we have um, each version and the DNN, the recommended and minimum and maximum. So at DNN 1.27, excuse me, a planted app version 1.27, the minimum was 9.11.2, so now our new minimum 9.13.7. All right, so that's all of the breaking changes that we're aware of that will go out with the system. So now we'll start talking about some enhancements, and the first one is the first benefit that we get out of this refactored token engine. I have uh, a token here in my test section called Echo, and the Echo token, if we run it, and actually we can edit it as well. The Echo token just takes whatever you send in from the echo parameter, token params colon echo, and outputs it. So if we run test echo with value, we get value. If we do it with Dale, we get Dale. So just to demonstrate, if we do test echo A, we get A. So I've composed it already, but it's basically token within token. If on a 127 system, you have this same valid token here, but try to evaluate it, you'll get an error from my tokens because it doesn't know how to evaluate this token within token. It gets confused on the delimiters, the quotes versus quotes, what's the beginning, what's the end. So it doesn't work in 1.27. In 1.28 tokens, if we have, let's see, I'm going to take, and I haven't set this up yet, so I need to export token from one place to the other. We'll do the export tokens and pick up the echo token and export it and copy that. And we'll bring that right on into the 8 system. So the exact same token. If I do this echo A, it resolves as A, just as expected. But now if I do this hybrid version where we're token within tokens, it resolves. It does the inside one first, which comes up with B, and then it does the outside one, which is it's sending AB to the same token and getting and outputting AB. So yeah, that's a nice. Anyone who's ever fought with tokens and tried to have tokens within tokens, you'll find that we have done a better job at um, token parsing. I'm watching along. If there's any questions or comments, I don't see them yet, but do ask along the way. Feel free. The next one I'll just mention, and this is one of the big ones, platform compatibility with DNN 10.1.1. We're planning to release it with that one. As many of you probably know, there was a security issue with the platform at earlier versions, and lots of people are anxious to get to version 10. It was a challenge for us as a as a such a comprehensive product as we have. It's not turned out to not be an easy thing to adapt to the changes that were done in version 10. And we had already, before that security announcement was made, we had encountered we had engaged to do some of these bigger things like the token refactoring. And so it was kind of a perfect storm. It made it very difficult for us to get that out. But any case, we're almost there. The beta is coming up, and we have full intention, if the beta is successful, to release in December. Anyway, 9.10 version 10.1.1. For those of you who haven't gone through an upgrade before, when you look at the Updates tab and you have the ability to upgrade, let's actually find it here. The when you click the update button and actually begin the process, you'll get the option to also include I can't demonstrate it here, but the form pops up that says, and do you also, so long as you're logged in as a super user at the time that you're trying to do this update, it'll offer the ability to upgrade DNN 10 at the same time. So we facilitate that, make it very, very easy. So we have our first question. Do you plan to support later versions of DNN 10 in future 128 hotfixes, such as 10.2. whatever? Our general policy is that every time we begin a new development cycle, that we're going to go with the latest stable DNN to um, as a starting point for that version. So as a general rule, we would go with whatever the highest release of the platform is at the time that we start DNN, excuse me, when we start our 1.29 release. So as a general rule, it would be at each major version, we'll up the DNN. That will be taken under advisement if there are, as there are issues with, if there are security issues, then we will try to incorporate those. But and it's entirely likely that minor versions that we'll be able to accommodate in hotfix kinds of cycles. But as a general rule, we'll do it in the major versions because that's where we invest the most amount of testing. Thanks for asking. All right, so that's DNN 10. Um, so enhancements, and these are in no particular order. They're just the way they came out uh, of our development cycle. So the next one is about drop-down slash Textbox synchronization with some things like grant user role. So what does this mean? If we have a workflow and we'll just create a workflow and I'm going to demonstrate the grant user role. Um, that when you grant a role, all the roles are listed in a dropdown. And so, for example, if I want to grant the role of subscriber, uh, then we just pick it from the dropdown. But you can, within our interface, you can choose to go with the expression. And so now you can do it by token or put in a constant. And notice that it automatically filled this in with 9. So just this is, again, a minor enhancement. It's only available on our new user interface, so like workflows, APIs, and automation, not action form. That as you switch back and forth, if I switch away now back from expression, the 9 will automatically translate back to subscribers. So just a minor convenience thing that as you're switching back and forth, it maintains the value instead of making you type it. If you um, uh, let's see, administrators, for example, if we change that to an expression, it's 5. If I change this to a 9 and go back to non-expression, it goes back to subscribers. It's just flipping back and forth on the interface. And that there's several actions that fall into that category. Create Excel from SQL Query has one of those. There's about 4 or 5 actions that does that. So that's a convenience thing. There's another, this is actually a performance change that we did that, but it comes out as lazy tokens. Um, so in the past, some things like when you do it, and this is really where it comes from, when why we made this change. When you upload a file in action form, there are many outputs with file upload. One of the outputs was a base 64. So let's say you were uploading a 10 megabyte file. We would create a token for you called base 64, which converts that file into base 64. And you can look up what that is if you're not familiar with it. But so now it's going to be probably a 20 megabyte string called base 64. So what we're finding is that people trying to upload very big files um, at the point that they uploaded them, we were creating this base 64, and so now that was creating an even, you have not only the file, but you have the base 64, and whether it was choking IIS um, or the memory of the system, whatever it was doing, it was too much, and the base 64 value is rarely used. So we have this very rarely used feature that was causing performance problems or failures. So now we have this concept called lazy load. If you don't ask for the base 64 of a file upload, we don't generate the base 64. And for most people, well, this is not going to be a breaking change for anybody, but most people don't use the base 64, and um, so we don't go to the effort. We don't put the load on the server to generate it when it's not being used. If you do use it, it'll generate it, and presumably it'll work out just fine for you if it has been in the past. So I can demonstrate this one with the pretty easily with the entity read action. Um, I'm going to start a new workflow. Back, don't save, create a new workflow, not import, new. This is going to be we need an entity first. So let's create an entity. I'm just going to create one called a notes, and um, for properties, we're going to have the name of the note and the description. And let's say that'll be a long text. It doesn't really matter what we're going to do here. Large text, and name is going to be our display name. So very quick entity creation. And we'll put in a couple of records into our note table. Doesn't really matter what the notes are here for this particular purpose. I just want to have some data to work with. So now if we go to a workflow and we'll call it test notes, and we don't have any inputs. We're just going to say read all notes. And the output token is going to be the notes. And then here, so this will read all of our notes. And if we wanted to output for debugging purposes, we could say one of the outputs is the count. And so if we do this, we should get a value of 2. So we've outputted the, the notes count. If we output the notes JSON, we're going to get all of the records in a JSON format. So we have the lunch, and lunchtime is 12, and quitting. So we have all of our JSON is outputted. That has always been a feature of the read all, or long been a feature, let's say. Read all always creates a JSON output. One of the newer actions, and I cannot recommend this one more highly, there are 2 context actions: context to JSON array, context to JSON object. and both of these are very similar. But it takes all of your tokens, all of your variables, and puts them into a variable for you to look at. So I am going to create a variable called tokens, and it's going to get um, all of my current context into a name value array. And so if I output that um, as my debug output, and save and test, run this, we can see that the notes JSON comes up content not displayed. So we're instead of anytime you're doing this discovery using context to JSON array, any of these lazy tokens are going to come up as content not displayed. Unless you ask for them, you're not going to get them, and it's letting you know that they're out there, but they're not going to be displayed. And then we can see the notes count because it's small and not lazy loaded, that you're going to get the actual value. So um, I guess the short way of saying that is it's a performance improvement you don't have to do a thing for, and you don't have to worry about it if you're actually using those kinds of outputs, which can be very large. You're still going to be able to get them, but if you're not using them, they will not be created for you. But I did want to demonstrate it just from the standpoint of if you're using this action and you can't figure out where content not displayed comes from, that's the reason it's lazy loaded. Okay, lots of time spent on that one. There is we have a test connector action. So if you have connectors in your site, like we have one to an SMTP provider, one to the built-in database, you might add other connectors to AI or other kinds of things that you might want to test them and make sure that they're working. As a matter of fact, you can add connectors uh, through um, through actions as well, and so you're going to want to be able to test them. I'm just going to demonstrate that we can just test one here to demonstrate that it works. So there's this test connector action, and the connector that we want to test is the built-in database, and we have a DB result is the name of our output token, and if we do a DB result output that has the value of DB result, that when we test it, we'll get a true or a false value. So we're getting a true value that that connector passed, it succeeded, and if it doesn't succeed, that you get an error message token and an exception token. So you could, for example, DB test error message or DB test exception with a colon would return why it didn't work. So the ability to test a connector. We've done a number of cases where we've improved inline help. So one of them is on listing buttons. And so let's take a look at if we look at our note entity that when we created the entity, it automatically created a form and a listing. And so we look at this listing and open it up here. That when you, I'm going to add a button and just demonstrate this is, let's say I'm going to do a change selected button. I'm just demonstrating, not actually going to do anything here, but if you enable selection and we see now that we have actions that we can do, so actions that happen overall, actions per item, final actions, there is a comment on all three of these that say special lists and tokens are available, learn more. The learn more takes you to our documentation and points out that there are some special things available to you. So there's a built-in token named IDs, comma delimited, that gives you the IDs of all the selected items. And IDs JSON array is the same thing, except it's in JSON format if you want to use it that way. There's another a list that gets created for you called action grid entry, and another one action grid entry selected. So just know that these are available to you, and they're very useful for um, trying to know what's been selected and being able to do extra processing on them. These lists have always been around, but now the help text is pointing you towards them so that you can quickly remember their names and what they do. So that's the inline help. Um, Another one is the date picker. So if I look at the form, and I'm just, again, making a nonsense change to a form, I'm going to add a date picker to our notes form here, just so we can see the date picker. I'll just point out a couple of the changes that are done here. So we'll add a date time picker. And so these notes about date time picker, it starts to get pretty involved because there's a lot of information we want you to know, but there's these are worth reading to know exactly how to use date time picker. And there's a new comment here that this can be an issue that if a daylight savings time shift happens between now and whatever future or past date that you're happening, you might see that the user time zone impacts that. So working with date and time in an international setting, in a time zone setting, it can be very complex. And so understanding what our controls will do should be of help to you. There's another one that has even confused some of our delivery team. This is UTC parameter, and this help text has been um, updated to help get you by this. There's kind of a if you don't know, is UTC kind of feels like you're explaining what the initial value is, what it's something that impacts the input, and it doesn't. Is UTC impacts the outputs that come from this control. So these various things like the day and month name and year all get impacted based on whether or not you choose is UTC. So it's an output thing, and this explains that. The file rename action, there was a little change in the tooltips there that we weren't explaining what kinds of file names, how you could provide the file names. And so that change just points out that you can use a file ID or a relative path or a full path. So it just provides better examples. There's a note here about the get version control changes. So when on a 127 and earlier system, if you were to inspect the network, what you would see is that on an ongoing basis, we submit an API call that, and now it's not doing it. What am I doing wrong here? This API call that says get version control changes, and it runs every few seconds. That what it's doing is it's getting for our version control system, and just for your convenience to know how many things that you have that are not yet committed. But unfortunately, this thing, the fact that this runs every few seconds, um, has caused some problems during updates. For example, when you're in the middle of an update, the screen is still trying to do this and keep this number up to date, and you may have seen a warning message at the bottom of your updates talking about get version control changes count. And it's just because while the update is going on, it can't get an answer to this question, and then it throws an error. In version 128, we've changed that it still is, if you were to look in the network tab, when you load the page for the first time, ugh, now I have missing dependencies. I can't. People are working on the code behind the scenes, and here our developer team has released something. So I'm gonna uh, get that. See if I can get that installed while we're talking here as well. I'm at their mercy. They're doing that, and I'm trying to do a webinar. Okay. So what we've done is just getting it. We no longer do that. We do it one time when the page loads. So this changes count is reflective of how many changes you had made as you loaded the page the first time. It doesn't update as you go along. This shouldn't impact people too much, but it is a small change and it will no longer cause errors for you. See, we have about 5 minutes left. Let's see if I can power through a few of these. Um, if you're installing Plantain app for the first time, we have an installer for version 1.28. So if you have as long as you have a DNN environment that's DNN 9.6.1 or above, you can install Plantain app uh, in one step with the installer. It will bring you all the way. It'll advance you to DNN 10 and install version 1.28, even if you have other DNN Sharp products installed. So like if you have an action form or an action grid installed and you want to get up to date and get Plantain app installed, that installer is available. We've already demonstrated this new upgrade screen. Now we're demonstrating it for the second time. Let's make sure that's moving along here. That worked. I'll hit continue so that it keeps moving. Um, this is kind of a behind the scenes thing, but we're letting you know we're doing a better job of figuring out all the things that you need when you install. Um, Everybody's environment is different. Even though we've gone to cumulative updates and everybody is getting the same things, there's still some you may or may not have installed some of our other add-ons, like for example the email client or the AI client and things like that. So we're doing a better job of figuring out um, what things you actually need and getting them installed. So that should improve the experience. Um, I cannot. This is another one of these that's hard to show you, but I will tell you. Um, just like we completely went through the tokens engine, we've also completely gone through the action engine. A little bit of history. DNN Sharp had products like Action Grid and Action Form, and each one of those processed actions. And because those could be installed completely separately, there were tables in the database that for action form to store its actions, action grid had separate tables to store its actions. And now we've gone on to having workflows. The actions for workflows were being stored in workflow tables and on and on. So we that was the history, and we wanted to clean that up. So now we have a single set of tables called PAA.action, I believe, and then there's PAA action stacks. And let's see if this site has come back yet. So if we go to SQL Console, you can find them easily enough here in the SQL Console. But it's important for you to know that um, these actions are now behind the scenes. They're in a better structure. And I suppose if you had any this shouldn't impact you as a low-code developer. The fact that we've moved where things are really shouldn't matter. But if you have designed anything that was looking at those old tables will cease to exist, and you'll need to find them in the PAA actions table. So the PAA actions table has things, I mean, here's the actions that we were just creating. There's the test connector and these actions that I did. You can see what kind of action they are, when they were modified, um, and whether or not they're enabled, things like that. So, and then what action stack they belong to. So if you're curious, you can dig into actions and action stacks. If you're a typical user, you don't really care where we're storing them, but know that they're all in one place. Uh, this does give us some ability to I would anticipate in future versions we will help you search for an action or be able to make changes globally, which was very difficult in the past because they were spread all over the place. We're at time, but I'm going to keep talking so that it's part of the record. You're welcome to hang on or see it in replay, but we have just a few more things to get to. There is a feature in workflows called Parallel Gateway. That's where you can do two or three, five things all at once in a workflow. And um, we've made steps so that each path on the Parallel Gateway reports their errors independently. So if an error happens in the second of five paths. The four things that succeeded will be fine. The path that failed will log an error and clearly indicate that it's what path it was from so that you can debug it. We had a problem with deleting jobs. In some cases, you would try to delete an automation job and it wouldn't delete. It was because the related triggers were either flawed or causing an error in some way. So you'll now be able to delete those jobs without errors. In the same way, excuse me, different thing. If you were importing something like importing an action or importing a workflow, and maybe that action doesn't exist on your system, we were not reporting that very well. And so you might, for example, have imported an automation, and you imported it, but then you couldn't open it. We had a client, at least one client, with this issue. So imagine, for example, you're trying to import an automation that calls a workflow, and the workflow doesn't exist yet because you're moving it from a development environment into a production environment. Um, the uh, oh, I'm talking about something else, but we have fixed that. So I'll just finish talking about that. The as you're importing it now, the automation will import the thing. The missing thing will not prevent you from opening it. This actual title mismatch thing, I was talking about the wrong thing, but I'll show it here. If we have a title called Read the Notes, doesn't matter what the title is, if we export that thing and then import it back in, uh, like you're going to use it again. It used to redefault this title to the default. Now it'll carry the title forward. So that's a convenience. That's a bug that maybe it's a convenience thing, but it's going to carry it forward. We have had a lot of projects that are related around IMAP, being able to read email through automation. So several projects have triggered us to improve the work here. The short version is that the IMAP triggers are more reliable and predictable, um, especially around if you're reading an email box that's very big and reading it for the first time, it now chunks that into groups of 10, so it'll read 10 emails at a time and process them and then go on, rather than trying to read them in very big groups. Previously, if you're trying to read them in very big groups and it failed, then the next time it would start over again. So if you had an email box that had 10,000 emails in it, it would get started, it would work and work and work, and then it would blow up, and then it would start over because it didn't remember where it had left off. So we've improved reliability. It remembers where it left off, and it processes in smaller batches so that it doesn't choke. Um, so on the obsolete side, we only have two items and we're done. The old workflow builder, when you were in version 1.27 and you were looking in workflows, and you were editing any kind of a workflow, you had this option at the top to switch to the legacy builder or to switch to the new builder. The legacy builder has now been removed. There's only the new builder. We do this sometimes when we're introducing new versions of things to try to make sure that if there's any unknown problems in the new whatever we're changing it to, that the legacy one is available so that you're not stranded if we have any bugs with it. So the new builder has been deemed stable, and so the old builder has been removed. You won't have that option anymore. And then the last thing, any professional coders that are developing extensions to Plant an App, that's one of the amazing features about Plant an App, that you can add your own actions. If somebody understands coding, you could add your own actions and they bolt on to Plant an App that make it easy for low coders to be able to, let's say you decide to integrate with your custom system and you make it and you add actions to communicate with some custom system. That way, a low coder could fill in the blank and be able to communicate with your system. Well, at 128, they're going to have to follow a few steps. They're pretty simple steps, but we've got them documented here exactly what technical changes they need to make to their code in order to make them work. So for most people, you're not using professional code enhancements, not an issue, but if you are, then you should need to get your developer to make these changes as you go to version 1.28. So as I mentioned, we've gone over our hour, but I'm happy to hang out and answer any questions that you might have. We didn't get to look, we'll still get it on the record here. Um, if you're hanging with me, I will show it off. The We have this new Forms 2.0, and as I get into that, if you have any questions, feel free to put them on the chat. But we want to show you where we're going, and this preview will almost certainly be available in your when you upgrade, when you do the beta test, and when you upgrade, you'll be able to get to this new product. Eventually, it's going to be something that you'll be able to take advantage of, porting your old action form content into the new forms product. But it won't be a requirement. We're not taking away action form, but we are adding this new capability. The new capability is all about being able to line up to provide for additional design and have a modern look and feel. So I can demonstrate kind of how it's going to look. It's still a work in progress, so still early, and you'll see it advance in versions yet to come. But the building experiences that you'll have, fields that you'll drag into the container on the right, and you'll be able to set up layouts by using containers, whether you want more of a side-by-side or a stacked kind of layout, you'll be able to do that. But you can drag buttons onto the form. You can whatever you drag onto the form, when you click into it, you get settings on the left. So it's more of an interactive, you see the position on the right and interact with it on the left. If you click a button, then you'll see your on-click buttons on and all the features of the button if you want to change the feature, but be able to add your actions to it. So it's a more visual experience, but it's intended to bring you the same kinds of functionality. It'll be like, 95% overlap with action form and yet be a more modern design experience. But I don't have one working that I can show you other than just kind of what the admin is going to look like. Um, and then we have one question that came from Jim. When importing objects between systems, will GUIDs be maintained and used to reference other objects? And Yes, that's a general goal where we're going, Jim, to try and get rid of doing things by IDs and instead do them by GUIDs. And to my knowledge, the at version, I think even at version 1.27, we were closing in on that. So that's the kind of thing that I would definitely advise you testing if you get into our beta or when you upgrade to 1.28. Hopefully, we'll be closer on that one. If you're not familiar with it, when you're doing things by IDs that were like a integer number that was assigned that's assigned when a system when a element like a button was or let's say an action was created and it had an ID um, that if you then import that from a development system into a production system that maybe that ID was used for something else or is no longer linked. And so by using GUIDs, those very long unique identifiers, we get to the point where if you you can export from one system and import to another system, and the linkage is maintained where it couldn't be maintained with an integer ID. Um, so there's a question. Somebody wanted to look at this feature within the new UI, and this is just the ability to expand into so hide the design and get more into the building or settings of something. So if you're looking at, for example, this field and you want to expand this area, so it's just an expansion of UI visual change. All right, thanks for asking. And so here you hung on for a bonus session, almost 25% extra for Low Code Cafe today. Um, we oftentimes cover questions and follow up of the Low Code Cafe in the Low Code Campfire on Friday. However, I am going to be out this particular Friday, so please don't pester Patrick, who is our guest host for Low Code Campfire. Don't pester him with those kinds of questions. You can ask and talk about it, but don't expect answers. We'll be happy to take those on when I'm back from a vacation day. All right, thanks for us hanging out with us and learning more about version 1.28. And hopefully we'll get into beta very, very soon. We will be back on late December with a new edition of Low Code Cafe. Thanks, everyone.